Good morning, students. Welcome back to your English literature class once again. Now, you all know that last means few days before I have started one new chapter, new story with you, new interesting story with you. That is the Kabuliwala, written by our poet, our famous poet Rabindranath Tagore himself. Okay. Now, before I start, I just want to read about our writer, just for knowledge. Rabindranath Tagore, who was born in the year of 1861 and had died on 1941, was a Bengali poet, writer, and philosopher. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for Gitanjali, which is a collection of his poems. He wrote Jana Gana Mana, which was adopted as India's national anthem. Okay, now let us come to the story. So, the Kabuliwala. Okay. One morning, I was hard at work when Minnie, my 5-year-old daughter, suddenly came to the window crying, "A Kabuliwala, a Kabuliwala." Okay. So, what has happened? On one particular morning, I was hard at work. This I is, you can say, the narrator of the story, the father of a little girl named Minnie, and we also can say this I is Rabindranath Tagore himself. Okay, so this person was hard at work when Minnie, his 5-year-old daughter, suddenly ran to the window crying, "A Kabuliwala, a Kabuliwala." Okay. And indeed, in the street below was an Afghan peddler dressed in loose, soiled clothing and a tall turban. Okay. Now see. And indeed, in the street below, there was standing an Afghan peddler. Peddler means, as I have told you, means a businessman, a trader. Okay. An Afghan peddler means who has come from Afghanistan. Dressed in loose means his dress was so loose fit. Soiled clothing and a tall turban. His dress was soiled, that means dirty, and a tall turban that he was wearing. You can see in the picture. Okay, green colored turban that he was wearing. He carried a bag on his back and boxes of grapes in his hand. Now, he carried a bag on his back and he was also carrying boxes of grapes in his hand. Hearing her calls, the Kabuliwala turned and looked up at the child, who by now was terror-struck. Now, hearing her calls, whose calls? It is the little girl's voice. Okay. The Kabuliwala turned and looked up at the child, who by now was terror-struck. Terror-struck means, as I have told you, it's wonder. Terror means frightened. Struck means surprised. You can say wonder-struck also. Okay. So terror means frightened. This little girl was afraid. And struck means suddenly, means surprised. That means suddenly she had seen such a Kabuliwala. She had never seen before. So she was terror-struck. She had a blind belief that little children were taken away in the large bag. She had a blind belief. Blind belief means she had a belief without any reason. Blind belief means you must have heard this word, blind belief. It is believing something without any fact, without any true fact. Okay, so she had a blind belief that little children were taken away in the large bag that this Kabuliwala was carrying. Okay, and that is why she was terror-struck. Okay. After I made some small purchases from the peddler, he asked, "Where is the little girl, sir?" So after the father made some little purchases from the Kabuliwala, this Kabuliwala then asked, "Where is the little girl, sir?" "I wanted Minnie to lose her false fear and sent for her." I wanted Minnie to lose her false fear. Now the father wanted his own daughter to lose her blind belief. False fear means the blind belief that she was having, and sent for her. She stood by my chair and looked at the Kabuliwala and his bag. Now as she came, she stood by my chair means beside my chair, and looked at the Kabuliwala and his bag. Okay, she was very much afraid of the bag. That's why she was looking at the bag. He offered her nuts and raisins, but she only clung closer to me. Now see, this Kabuliwala had offered him nuts and raisins. Raisins, you must be knowing. But she only clung closer to me. She only stood very closer to the father. Okay. My talkative child wouldn't speak a word. The father knows that his daughter is a very talkative girl. She likes to talk so much. But that day, his talkative child wouldn't speak a word. That means this little girl was so afraid that she can't speak a word. This was their first meeting. Now, this was the first meeting, between Kabuliwala and the little girl. Okay. A few months later, however, I was startled to find Minnie laughing and talking with Rahman, the Kabuliwala. Now see, a few mornings later means after few days, after some days, this father has become surprised. He had become surprised to find out that Minnie laughing and talking with Rahman the Kabuliwala. That means what? In these days, Minnie had made a good friendship with Kabuliwala. Okay. He won the child over with his offerings of nuts and fruit. Means the Kabuliwala had won the child's heart by his offerings of nuts and fruit. Okay. In all her life, my small daughter had never found such a patient listener. Now the father is telling that in all her life means Minnie's life. Okay. My small daughter had never found so patient a listener. Such a patient listener. Who is the patient listener? The Kabuliwala is the patient listener. So, in all her life, Minnie had never found such a patient listener like the Kabuliwala, who is listening to her without feeling bored. Okay. The two were now great friends. Now the two means the Kabuliwala himself and Minnie became very good friends now. Okay.